The Source continues its look at policing here in Niagara. Joining us now, Niagara Regional Police Chief Bryan MacCulloch. Welcome to the program, Bryan.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Chief, what is the morale of officers these days in this era of increased social media and Black Lives Matters protests?
Well, Mike, I'll be honest, it's a difficult time for our police officers, but really proud of the way that they've met the challenge. They are as dedicated and motivated as ever in responding to the calls for service and committed as ever to keeping our communities safe.
When you look at the protests that happened earlier this year, and obviously there was a lot of outcry in the United States, nothing of that magnitude here in Niagara. Police presence at those protests as supporters of the protesters as well. What was it like to be there during those protests?
I think it was important for us, particularly myself as the Chief of Police representing, the nearly 1,100 sworn and civilian members of the service, to let the Black community and the other members who were there was certainly a lot of representation from the BIPOC community who were there, to let them know that we are committed to delivering unbiased policing to our communities. And I had the opportunity to meet with the organizers of the demonstration in Niagara Falls and meet with a number of the demonstrators. And from comments that I received, our presence was certainly welcome and appreciated.
Later on in today's program, we'll be talking to Saleh Waziruddin from the Niagara Region Anti-Racism Association. They have a number of, I don't want to call them demands, but they do have a number of recommendations. Have you been able to sit down at the table with Saleh and that group to talk about some of these recommendations?
I haven't spoken directly with Saleh, but we've received those recommendations, and we're working on preparing a response to our board on, there's a number of items that they've put forward through to the City of St. Catharines and then ultimately through to Regional Council and now onto our Police Services Board.
Change does take time if it does happen. And you just bring up a point right there that there are levels of authority that have to be looked at when change is enacted.
A lot of what's outlined in those recommendations there's funding that is associated with those, like body-worn cameras as an example, but also there's legislation that comes from the province that we can't necessarily change the legislation. We certainly are open and hearing from the community as to the changes that they're looking for.
You've been adamant that your officers, NRP officers, are not racist, and I'm not here to ask any more questions about that, but is there systemic racism, and can that be solved?
So what I have said, what I said to City Council in St. Catharines and to Regional Council is that we acknowledge the existence of systemic racism within the institution of policing and within the judicial system.
It's really rampant in all institutions
within
across
all
Canada.
Of society, exactly. But we're not seeing evidence of systemic racism within Niagara Regional Police Service. We've, as part of our strategic plan on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we undertook having an external consultant come into the service because we know that systemic racism can manifest itself in policies and procedures that may be overt and not necessarily readily apparent. So we had our policies and procedures reviewed. There are a number of recommendations that came out of that review. The last of those recommendations were implemented in 2018. So what I have said is that we're committed to continually review our policies and procedures because it's in our best interest to serve our community effectively, to not exclude or marginalize any particular community.
There's a lot of talk from the United States, again, mostly about defunding the police, but that talk has found its way up here into Canada and even in Niagara as far as some of these recommendations. What would that mean to defund the police?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what the defund actually means because I think what we're what we're committed to is working with our community partners. I think what we've heard is that there's concern about police responding to an ever-increasing number of mental health calls, as an example. We're working with EMS and other community partners to ensure that we're providing the best level of response to our persons who are in crisis. As far as defunding our police budget, that would have a pretty significant impact on our ability to deliver the level of policing that we currently provide to our community.
There's an online signature about the body cameras. And again, looking at past discussion here in Niagara, you're waiting really for the Ontario government to make a declaration on that, are you not?
I have said, and again, I said it at Regional Council, and I've had discussions with our board, that body-worn cameras is a really important, and there are a lot of different decisions that go along with body-worn cameras in terms of policy and procedure and whatnot. The Ministry of the Solicitor General is our ministry that oversees policing. And being that it is such an important issue, I think it's important enough that the ministry weighs in and provides some guidance to police services on the implementation of a body-worn camera program.
Policing is almost like a fraternity in a way. When you see violence against police officers, such as the recent shooting down in California, you must take it personally.
Well, it is disturbing, and what I can say about our police officers here, again, they're so dedicated and so committed to serving and protecting our community, and the notion that anyone would cause harm to our officers is disturbing, and to any officer, it does impact, I guess, the brotherhood and sisterhood of policing.
Do you look forward to further talks with organizations on all of these issues, racism and other things?
In Niagara, we have a Chief of Police Community Inclusion Council. We have representation from the BIPOC community and the Black, Indigenous, different faith groups, the LGBTQ plus community, roughly about 24 representatives from the community. And those discussions have been very enlightening. They've been going on for about 2 years now. They continue and will continue, and we're committed to improving continuously, and their input and feedback has been tremendously important throughout our discussions to date, and I'm sure will be equally important as we move forward.
Chief MacCulloch, thank you very much for joining us on The Source today.
You're welcome. Thank you.